So just wanted to briefly recap this illustration, the first illustration that we had a brief discussion last week. So a couple of weeks ago. So let me just go through this verse. Sayata Shakuni Sutrena Prabaddo Disham Disham Patitva Anyatra Ayatanam Alabdva Bandhanameva Upashrayate Evameva Kalu Somya Tan Mano Disham Disham Patitva Anyatra Ayatanam Alabdva Pranameva upashrayate prana bandhanam hi eva mana iti. So what did he say in this? There is this bird tied through the thread to a pillar. The bird is completely dependent on this pillar to which it is tied. Yeah. So this concept, this illustration here gives you a beautiful example how the movement of the bird is entirely dependent on how it is tied to the pillar. The length of the rope will still dictate how much it is able to fly around. And as you know, in the night time, it comes down and then sleeps next to this pillar, this post. So we have discussed that in great detail. So in this example, the bird is the jiva. This pillar or the post is Brahman. Yeah. So this example that gives you an illustration of dependence immediately should remind you of this bimba and pratibimba relationship between the jiva and Brahman or the supreme. So in this example, jiva is the pratibimba and bimba is this pillar, and this is the object. So the question that I have for us to think about is the relationship between object and the image. Are they the same? Are they similar? Or are they different? So what do we think is the relationship between bimba, which is the object, and the pratibimba? So can I have some contributions here, please?
They are similar.
Yes, similar, Suresh. Thank you. Anybody else got a different view?
Different. No different.
Ragnesh, go on.
It depends on the other factors like lighting, angle, etc. But dependent, I would say. They could be dependent on each other.
Dependent on each other. Okay, so in that case, okay, explain how the image is dependent on the object.
So, for example, my image in a mirror, depending on what sort of mirror it is it biconvex, biconcave? You know, this all in a children play area, zoo, etc. Usually, you have various areas where you can see tall, short, fat. So that's what I meant.
Okay, thank you, Pragnesh. Excellent. So Shushrut has also said similar but dependent is the image. Okay, so we are getting a theme here. So the object here is this post, which is Brahman. The image is this bird, which is the jiva. So this bimba pratibimba bhava, very first described in the Rig Veda. Rupam rupam pratirupo babuvaha tadasya rupam pratichakshanaya. That is a fundamental verse of Rig Veda that describes the relationship between Brahman and the Jiva through Bimba Pratibimba relationship. So if the object is not there, the image is not there. If the object does not make an attempt to wear the tie, the image does not wear the tie. But the image is not the same as the object. Yeah, it is totally dependent on the object. The image is totally dependent on the object. But there is an element of sadrishya, there is an element of similarity, whereas the object is pradanya. So again, you know, with the Udalaka's concept of sadrishya and pradanya also comes in this bimba pratibimba bhava. So we need to think about this bird and the post is essentially talking about the relationship of dependence. This has got nothing to do whether if the mirror is gone, is the jiva going to go away and all that exists is only the object. So that is a fallacious argument. Here, the concept that the Rig Veda is talking about is the concept of dependence of the reflection on the object. Okay, and who is this pillar? Who is this Brahman? Uddalaka has celebrated this in so many ways. Initially, it's Sadeva Somya Idamagra Asi Ekameva Advityam. This Brahman, the Sat, is one, and he was there before creation, and he has celebrated that. This Pradanya Vastu or the Bimba. And he has also said previously, Sanmulaha, Somya Imaha, Sarvaha, Prajaha, Sada, Ayatanaha, Sat Pratishtaha. And he has celebrated this Sat as that everything else gets its origin from it. Everything else is dependent on it. For everything, it is the Ashraya. And for everything, it is the final destination, is what he has said in this very famous verse that Uddalaka has said. Sanmulaha, Somya Imaha, Sarvaha, Prajaha, Sada, Ayatanaha, Sat Pratishtaha. So now what Uddalaka is going to do is he's going to talk to us about Brahman. So this post is there, right? How is that Sat? What is that Brahman? What is that Bimba? We have spoken so much about this chap now, but how is this Brahman? Okay, to describe how is that Brahman, he immediately takes us to the next verse, which somehow is a controversial verse for some people, but for others, it is a beautiful verse that celebrates the greatness of the Supreme. What did Uddalaka say here? Saya esho anima aitadatmyam idam sarvam tat satyam sa atma tat tvam asi shvetaketu. So this is the famous verse. And last time when we looked at this, we said the various concepts. This is talking about a non-material entity. We spoke about rules of interpretation, if you remember. So this verse is talking about Brahman. Yeah, it is a non-material entity. So this particular verse becomes authoritative with regards to what it says. So the next step there is whether it is a Niravakasha Shruti or a Savakasha Shruti. It is a Savakasha Shruti. Savakasha Shruti means there are different ways of approaching and understanding this verse. There isn't just one way of looking at it and say that is the final answer. There are so many ways of looking at this verse. So Savakasha Shruti. So in the rules of interpretation of Vedic verses, Niravakasha Shruti takes prominence over Savakasha Shruti. But when there is a Savakasha Shruti, you need to have rules of interpretation called as Tatparya Lingas to understand what the verse is saying. So we are not going to go into every aspect of the Tatparya Lingas, but over the next 3 or 4 sessions, we will look at how these verses open up in different ways for our contemplation. Yeah, so let's look at this. So there are 12 words before Tat Tvam Asi, and we spent very briefly last time. Saha, Yaha, Eshaha, Anima, Etad, Atmyam, Idam, Sarvam, Tat, Satyam, Saha, Atma. So these 12 adjectives are given to the Supreme Being. And then it says Tat Tvam Asi. Okay, so we need to understand the context, as Vyasa advises us again and again, Prakaranat. Take the context and understand what Uddalaka is saying about that Sat, that pillar to which this bird is attached. Let's not forget that. This is the context here. He is talking about that bird and a pillar, and now he is describing how that post or a pillar is, and he is giving these adjectives. So what are these adjectives? Saha, we said Saha means etymologically. So we should look at etymologically. Saha means in colloquial Sanskrit, that which is something that's very far. Saha means somebody who is very far away is called Saha. Yeah. So, but in Vedic Sanskrit, it is more etymological. So Saratvat Saha. That means Saratvat Saha means Raso Vai Saha. And we have done this before. These verses are nice, worth going through again. Rasahi eva ayam labdva anandi bhavati. So rasa means he who is full of ananda. Yeah. Yaha means Yamayati or Yamyati. That means he is full of Jnana Swarupa, and he who controls every aspect of the universe. For that bird, he's controlling that bird by holding it. Yeah, let us not forget that that illustration there. Yeshaha, Ishaha or Ishtaha. He is the dearest friend of this bird. That bird, what happens to that bird? Nighttime when it is tired, it comes and sleeps next to him. Similarly, the jivas in the state of Shushupti, after going around everywhere during the daytime, they come close to him and sleep next to him. That is the Shushupti state. So, Ishaha, Ishtaha. Yeah, and we know the Dvasuparana verse very well. So, if Saha is there, Eshaha means this fellow who is very close to who? So Aishtaha, this person, he is very, very close to you. He is not only very far away, but he is also very close to you. And we saw that Narayana Sukta Yajurveda, Antarbahishta Tat Sarvam Vyapya Narayana Sthitaha. Never forget that verse, because that is a foundational verse for all that Vedas have to say. He is everywhere, but how is he? He is Anima. Anima means very subtle. And of course, the etymology of Anima can be at least three types. Anutvena meya, Anayati ma, Anu and ma. So last week we discussed a lot about Anutvena meya, Anayati ma. That means Anutvena meya means he is very, very subtle. This subtle being who is everywhere in the universe and is also inside us is so subtle. But we need to know that subtle. Yeah. To know that subtle, what do we need? Anayati plus ma, which means we need his grace. Unless his grace is there, we can't see him. And the next level of that Anuma meaning is Anu plus ma. Anu means Jiva. And the Jiva has to see him and know him. With our external senses, we are never going to be able to see the Supreme, because these are all material. A material eye is never going to be able to see something that is non-material. So it is only a non-material thing that can actually see a non-material thing. So that concept of Anu Ma, Anu is Jiva, Ma means Jnana. So it's only the Jiva that can actually see the Antaryamin who is inside him. So the Anima, that is why he is called Anima. So these are all the names of the Supreme that celebrate certain aspects and his greatness. Saya Esha Anima. What happens next? Etad Atmyam Idam Sarvam. This Etad is very close to you. Atmyam Idam Sarvam. Atmyam means he is the Swami. He controls Idam Sarvam, all else in the universe. Both the Ksharas, the Jada, the Ksharas, Akshara, Purushottama, or you can say Aksharaha, Kutasto Aksharaha, and Aksharaha. From the 15th verse, we can understand that this person is supreme most, but he is the Swami or the master or the governor of all these. Idam Sarvam. Okay, so Aitadatmyam Idam Sarvam. Yeah. That's what Uddalaka says. And then he immediately says, Tat Satyam. Tat is his name. He is also called Tat because Tataha means all pervasive. And we know this verse from Gita chapter 17. Could I invite one of our friends to recite this, please? 17:23. Who wants to take this? Any volunteers?
Shall I read, Madhu?
Sheilaji, go on. Yeah.
Om Tatsaditi Nirdesho Brahmanastrividah Smrutah Brahmanastena Vedascha Yajnata Vihita Pura.
Thank you very much, Sheilaji. Very beautifully said. So, and Krishna says, Tat is my name. I am also called Om. I am also called Tat. I am also called Sat. Yeah. So Om, Tat, Sat. These are all my names. Arjuna is what Krishna has said in that verse, and we have done in Gayatri also. So Tataha is his name. Yeah. Satyam. We know Satyam is his name because, as you know, in Taittiriya Upanishad, Brahma vidapnoti param tadesha abhyukta Satyam. Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma. Yeah, it gives a definition of who the Brahma is, and very first it uses this Satyam. And of course, Satyam itself opens up into various ways, and we have done these sessions before of actually splitting Satyam into Sat, Ti, and Ya, and Yam, and so on and so forth. So you can go back to those previous lectures, but essentially saying he is, number one, Nirdushta. He is without any defects. And he is Jnanananda Swarupa. So those are the two basic definitions of the Supreme. And of course, is involved in eightfold dispensation of the world of Jadas and sentient beings. Creation, existence, destruction, maintenance, giving knowledge, giving ignorance, giving bandha, and also giving moksha. So those 8 components of the cosmic dispensation of the Supreme is again covered by Satyam. So again, he is celebrated as Satyam. Yeah. So remember, this pillar or Brahman is being given all these adjectives by Uddalaka to Shvetaketu. And then he says, look, Etadatmyam idam sarvam. This whole thing is dependent on him, and that is why it is real. Tat Satyam. Therefore, the created world is real. It is not an illusion. And we saw these verses from Shvetashvatara Upanishad and Srimad Bhagavatam last time. So again, go back and have a revision of those. Yeah. So Uddalaka is reminding us of the great qualities of the Supreme who is controlling this bird or the jiva. Okay. Then he said, Saha Atma Tat Tvam Asi. So he said Saha. So there that Saha is not the same meaning as Saratvat Saha, or Saha is that person who is out there. When the Vedas give you same words in the same sentence, each word has got a different meaning. They don't have the same meaning. So first when he says Saya Esha Anima, that Sa there was Saratvat Saha. But here Saha means Sadayati iti Saha. Sadayati means whatever we ask, he would give. Yeah, so that is why he is called Saha. And it would say he is also called Atma. And I'll discuss that in the next verse as to what that Atma is. Because we need to understand who this Atma is before we understand why this Tat Tvam Asi has come there. So again, Sa Atma Tat Tvam Asi, and we did this basic grammar. Yeah, this is not some PhD work. This is basic year 1 grammar of Swarna Dirgha Sandhi. Yeah, when there is a long vowel and a short vowel next to each other, they merge with each other, it becomes one long vowel. So Atma, A is the Dirgha and Hraswa is A. So when they join, it becomes A. Okay, so when you have Sa Atma Tattvamasi, it can become Atma Atatvamasi or Atma Tattvamasi. Okay, so we've dealt with this before. So note this very important point here. Rishis are very clever, the Vedic Rishis, because let's not forget, Chandogya Upanishad is Apaurishya. It is an intuition of the Rishis, and he has just received it and he is just telling it. Yeah. So he has just only said Tat Tvam Asi. To make things easy for our monastic friends, he could have said Sat Tvam Asi. Sa Atma Sat Tvam Asi. Problem solved. There is no controversy at all if the verse was Sat Tvam Asi, but it is not Sat Tvam Asi, it is Tat Tvam Asi. Now for the dualistic schools, he could have said Tvam Atat Asi. If he had said that, the dualistic school would have raised their arms and said, we are right. And he could have just said Tvam Atat Asi. And if he had said that, problem solved for the dualistic schools. But the Rishi here has not said that. Yeah, so that is the beauty of our Vedas and our Shastras, because they keep it very cryptic, because that is why they are called Chandas. Yeah, we have done this before. Chandas means Vedas. What does Chandas means? Chadayanti hava enam chandamsi. You have to break it open. You have to have individual effort. This is important. You do your individual efforts, you do your research, you do your thinking, you do your contemplation and reason out, mate. Vedas are not going to write it down everything and give it to you on the table so that you can just eat it and go away. No, it is not for the man on the streets. It is for deep contemplation and thinking. And the rishis, and this is a recurrent theme in the Upanishads, that these are all these informations that are kept in a very cryptic way so that they can open up in various different directions. It is up to individual efforts to understand what the Rishi is actually saying, or what the Apaurushaya Veda is actually saying. So it is that individual effort that is required to understand, because he could have said Satvamasi, or he could have said Tvam Atatasi. That is not what was said. What was said was Atma Tattvam Asi. So Tat was put there, not Sat. So let's come back to that. I hope you will find this interesting. Why is that important? So what do we have? Sa Atma Tattvam Asi Shvetaketo. So Saha here we have said Sadayati iti Saha. That Saha is also a name of the Supreme. Sadayati, that which gives whatever we ask for, is Saha. Then immediately after Saha, Uddalaka puts Atma. Who is this Atma? Yeah, is the Atma you and me, or Atma somebody else? I just want to open it up for discussions. So whom do we think is the real Atma here? So who is going to take this on, or in a more contributions, the better? Who is Atma? Or what are the meanings of Atma? Suresh.
Saha Atma is supreme.
Thank you, Shilaji.
Brahman.
Thank you.
Saha.
Yeah. Yeah,
Atma,
Suresh?
Atma could be your Hridaya, Manas, Buddhi, Chitta.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jagdish ji. Yeah, very well said. Suresh?
I mean, Atma in its the most important meaning, Artha, is the Paramatma, but it can be used colloquially to mean a few other things as well.
Yeah, thank you, Suresh. Wonderful. So all of us got it right. Sorry, we all got it absolutely right. So the Atma has got several meanings. So Atma can mean the body. Somebody said Atma Hatya. That means they give up their body. Yes, so Atma is called the body. Atma can mean the mind, as Jagadish Bhatt mentioned. Atma can mean the Buddhi. Atma can mean the Jiva. Atma can also mean the Paramatma. But as Suresh was pointing out, the Parama Mukhya Vritti, as it's called, or the most important meaning of Atma is Paramatma. There are all these other meanings of Atma, but it has to be taken in context. Yeah. Here the context is, Uddalaka is talking about the Supreme, Saya Esha Anima, Aitadatmyam Idam Sarvam, Tat Satyam, Saha Atma. So in that context, the Atma is the Supreme Being, not the Jiva. Yeah, like how our Yajnavalkya reminded Maitreyi, Atmava are drashtavyaha, shrotavyo mantavyo, nitidyasitavyo Maitreyi. So he said, Maitreyi, you should see that Atma. There the Atma means not the Jivatma or the body, it means the Supreme Brahman. Yeah, and in Brahma Sutra, Vedavyasa in the very first Adhyaya actually takes on this problem. Is Atma Jiva or Brahman? When it is discussed in the Shastras, when the word Atma comes, is it Pratyagatman, which is the Jivatman, or Paramatman, which is Brahman? What is the definition of Atman when it comes in the Shastra? And Vedavyasa gives us a definition. Who is our founding fathers? Let's not forget him. Gaunaschetna Atma Shabdat. That is the sutra there. That means Gaunaschetna means the three gunas. Yeah. Atma Jivas are bound by three gunas. Yeah, in our existence. That is not what the Atma means in the Shastras. So Gaunaschet na no Atma Shabdat. So there the Atma Shabda means primarily the supreme being. Okay, and of course we have seen in Mandukya Upanishad, if you remember, Sarvam hi etat Brahma, Ayam Atma Brahma. So when Varuna celebrates this Antaryamin, he says, this fellow who is very close to me, this Brahman who is everywhere, he is also close to me and he is called Atma. Okay, so there are other schools which look at it differently and would say Atma cha Brahma. This Jivatman himself is Paramatman. That is the monistic view. But if you look at the Varuna, what he is saying here, he says, you know that Brahman who is everywhere, the same Brahman is the one who is inside you and he is also called Atma. How do you resolve this? Gaunas Chetna Atma Shabdat, and also take internal evidence from other Upanishads. And then when you take Atma as a word, the etymology of Atma is so important. Apnoti iti Atma. Apnoti means that which is inside you is Atma. Adatte iti Atma. That which gives you everything is Atma. Exactly like Sadayati. Adatte iti Atma. Atti iti Atma. He who eats everything during dissolution is Atma. Atatatvat iti Atma. Atatat means that which is all pervading is also called Atma. Okay, and of course Atma also means our inner controller or our Swami, and that we have read this before. So here Atma primarily denotes God only and nobody else. So there cannot be any controversy here. So Saha Atma. So he has said so much. Uddalaka has said, Saya Esha Anima, Aitadatmyam Vidam Sarvam, Tat Satyam Saha Atma. And then he puts this puzzling verse, Tat Tvam Asi. Now, how we should read this is, as I told you in the previous verse, we should use grammar or any grammar to open it up and understand how do you read it. So we have said it can be Sa-atma Tattvamasi or Sa-atma Atatvamasi. So the easiest way of looking at it with no controversy but using basic grammar is, if you look at Sa-atma Atatvamasi, it is very easy because in the last 12 words, Uddalaka has said, this fellow is so great. Saya esha anima aitadatmam idam sarvam tat satyam sat. You're kidding me, Shvetaketu? Any of those? Are you any of those? You're none of. Shed your ego, Shvetaketu, because you're not him. You do not have any of those qualities. You did not create the universe. You do not control anything. Why are you standing in front of me like a pillar? So when the father tells him off, that is like a shock treatment for Shvetaketu when he has described all this supreme person with all these adjectives. So that is one way of looking at it. But it is still there, Saha Atma Tat Tvam Asi. There is no problem. You can still look at it as Saha Atma Tat Tvam Asi. So there, the Tat. So in the Vedic times, Tat used to be a very, very popular and an important word. The reason being, people used to use Tat in 7 different meanings. That's called Saptasu Pratama. So for those interested in Sanskrit, please Google Saptasu Pratama and read about it and compare it to English grammar. It's very similar. Various cases for nouns. Saptasu Pratama. So the Tat there can have 7 meanings. Tat Adina, Tat Sadrishya, Tasmin, Tasmat, Tasmai, Tasya, Tat Prati. Okay. So those are all the ways. So this example, so we have to always pull ourselves back to what is the example that is being described. The example that is being described is the bird and the post, or the jiva and the Brahman. So here what you can say is, after he has said, celebrated the supreme, Sayayesha anima itadatmam idam sarvam tat satyam sa atma, tat adina tvam asi, tat sadrishya tvam asi. So when you take the Saptasu Pratama meaning there, it fits very well. So Tat Adinatvamasi. So this bird is tied through this sutra to this pillar. That is what Uddalaka has given the example. So in that context, what you should understand is, you are not him, but you are dependent on him. Yeah, you are not him, but you have some similarity, some similar features like him, is what Uddalaka is saying there. Sa atma tat adinatvamasi tat sadrishya tvamasi shvetaketu. Okay, so now this is important because when you want to understand the meaning, when you want to understand the philosophy, you have to go back to the illustration that is being given there. Yeah. So the illustration there is what? There is a bird which is tied to a rope to a pillar. So in this example, the bird is different, the rope is different, and the pillar is different. Every component of this illustration is different. And also, what does this Shakuni, does this bird? Bandhanameva upa ashrayate. It comes and only rests next to the pillar. It does not become the pillar. So those illustrations, the words are very clear and the philosophy is there, and Uddalaka has given the example to illustrate a philosophy. What is that philosophy? Tat adina tvamasi, tat sadrishya tvamasi. So when you look at it from that angle, in the context, putting in the rules of grammar, there is no controversy from where I see it, and the illustration flows smoothly with regards to the philosophy that we want to learn. Yeah. So moving on. So this Tattvamasi it's plagued the brains of so many people over hundreds and hundreds of years. So let's look at it a bit more in detail, because that word Tattvamasi itself opens up giving us various answers. I told you about Saptasu Prathama. I told you about the 7 ways in which that Tat can be opened up. But the word Tattvamasi itself opens up in so many other ways when you think and contemplate about this. And my request here is, let's go back to these sessions and think about it again and again and read other books to grasp what Uddalaka is telling us. So what is he telling us? Tat Tvam Asi. 3 words. Yeah. Tat. Tat means what? Tataha. Tataha, we know that which is all pervasive. Antar Bahishta Tat Sarvam Vyapya Narayana Stitaha. Correct? So he said, Tat, you know the Tat who is there everywhere, the same Tat, Tvamasi, that same Tat is inside you. That is another way of looking at that word Tat Tvamasi. The same Tat who is outside, he is also inside you. Exactly what Narayana Shukta has said. Yeah. Who is inside you? Your Antaryamin. So the verse, if you look at it in that direction, it is talking about Antaryamin. This same Tataha is also Tvam Asi, inside you as your Antaryamin. Okay, and we have this verse in chapter 15, isn't it? 15th verse. So Gita also talks about it. Sarvasya cha aham hridi sannivishtaha. I am inside everybody's heart. Antaryami. And again, Vedavyasa comes to a rescue here. There are two sutras. He has given the rules for interpretation. Antaryami yadi deivadishu dharma vyapadeshat. Shastra drishyatupadesho vamadevavat. I'll come to this in the next verse. This sutra is very, very important. Shastra drishyatu upadeshaha vamadevavat. Okay. What is that Shastra drishti of what Vamadeva experienced? He experienced the Antaryamitva of the Supreme. So when you look at the Tataha, Tvam Asi, that fellow who is everywhere is inside you. No problem from that angle, how Tat Tvam Asi opens up. So what again, my hope here is we should not go with a preconceived idea of what Tat Tvam Asi is. With our ideas, we should look at the verse and see how it opens up. That's what is called Chadayanti iti Chandamsi. Okay. So now you look at it from another angle. That is another interesting angle. These are names of the Supreme. Tataha, we know, is the name of the Supreme because Krishna has said, Om Tat Sat iti Nirdeshaha. Tvam, and some of you may not be familiar with this. Etymology of the word tam, tvam. Tvam comes with two root words, tavas or twish. Tavas is bala or strength. Twish means shining, prakashamana, tejo rupaha, jnananandamaya, jnanamaya. All those things is twish. Tavas is bala, sarvakarta. Yeah, bala. Yeah. So that is the meaning of tvam. Yeah. Asi is the name of the Supreme. Asi comes from the root word asu prerane, which means sarva preraka, he who is the controller of everything. So when you look at the verse Tat Tvam Asi, these are all the names of the Supreme in another angle. Tataha, Tavas, Twish, Asu prerane. Okay. Look at the beauty of what Uddalaka has taken. Uddalaka has taken an example of a post or a pillar to which this bird is attached to. And he said this pillar is Brahman. And we all know that famous story of Hiranyakashipu and Prahalada. And where did Narasimha came out from? He comes out from a pillar or a post. And Narasimha comes out for that. And when you do this comparative analysis, the Samanvaya of the Shastra is completely there. There is no controversy at all here. So this Balatma and Prahalada, what does he worship as? For those of you who are familiar with Srimad Bhagavatam and this particular incident, he worships this Narasimha as, you are Bala, you are full of strength and so on and so forth. He worships him as. Yeah. So Tavas, Bala, Prahalada, think about Narasimha, think about the post. Think about the post that the Uddalaka has actually described. Yeah, so they all link up to the same concept. Yeah, so when you look at that from that angle, Tat Tvam Asi then becomes the name of the Supreme. Asi becomes name of the Supreme. And that is the same as in Aham Brahmasmi. And we have dealt with this before. Maybe on another occasion we can take this. Because that is what Vedavyasa has said in the previous slide. Shastra Drishyatupadesho Vamadevavati. Why did he say that? Because in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, we all know this famous verse again, like Tat Tvam Asi. Brahmava idamagra asi tadatmanam yeva avet aham brahmasmi iti tasmat tat sarvam abhavat. Tad yo devanam pratyabudhyata sa eva tadabhavat tata rishinam tata manushyanam tadetat pashyan rishihi Vamadevaha pratipede aham manuhu abhavam suryascha iti. Okay, so all these things are linked because where the Vamadeva is celebrating the Supreme as the Antaryamin of Manu, Antaryamin of Surya. Okay, so again there Aham and Brahma and Asmi are the names of the Supreme. It does not mean I am Brahman. Or for example, Tat Tvam Asi does not mean I am Brahman. in the other side of the coin. They are all the names of the Supreme. When we look at these angles, it opens up entirely differently. So my intention is to give you a different perspective of how to look at the Vedas. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. So again, we are still stuck with Tat Tvam Asi, because there is so much to be said about Tat Tvam Asi, and sometimes I feel this is most unfortunate when I hear some speakers talk about Tat Tvam Asi as thou art that, and then get on with other things in life. No, Tat Tvam Asi has got so many other ways of contemplation. If we do not do that, we are forgetting what our rishis are actually telling us. So look at this. Aitadatmyam idam sarvam tat satyam sa atma tattvamasi. So aitadatmyam idam sarvam is this jagat or the prakriti. So that jagat becomes the tat there. Tvam is the jiva there, asi. So what he says is, you jivas who are there in the samsara, right? You're all part of this material existence at this point of time. You're all part of this. Aitadatmyam idam sarvam. That tat is there, right? You are tvamasi. Why? Because idam is in napumsakalinga, atma is in pullinga. So let's not spend too much time with this. So you have to look at the each word, whether it is feminine, masculine, neutral, and then link with other words. When you do that, this is another way in which you look at it, that these jivas are all part of this material existence, which has also got jadas. But then you are not the jada. You are similar to me because you are sentient. So that's sadrishya tvam asi. Okay, but you know me, I am entirely different from all these. I am totally different from all these. This is what our Gita chapter 15 has Bhutasto Akshara. And the Purusha Shukta that we have done before, that is what the Purusha Shukta has also spoken about. Yeah, I don't know if anybody is interested in reciting the Purusha Shukta. Harish, do you want to have a go at this? Okay,
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, go for the Purusha Shukta.
I'm trying to find the verse. Where does it start? I'm not able to see.
I'm here in the slide here. Om Sahasra Shirisha, the first varga.
Okay. Om Sahasra Shirisha Purushaha Sahasraksha Sahasrapat Sabhumim Vishvato Vritva Atyatishta Dashangulam. What?
That's fine, Harish. Thank you. So, Purusha eva idam sarvam yadbhutam yaccha bhavyam uta amrutatvasya ishanaha yadannena atirohati yetavanasya mahima ato jayamshcha purushaha pado asya vishwabhutani tripadasya amrutandivi tripad urdhva udait purushaha. Tripad urdhva udait purushaha pado asya iha abhavat punaha. So when you look at these verses in Purusha Shukta, it's very clearly said, he is far beyond the Prakriti and the Jivas. He is far above them. But you Jiva, Tvam Asi, from what Tat is? So you're all part of this material existence. So that is another view when you look at Tattvam Asi. Not just thou art that. Okay. Now, so I hope I've just given you a sample here. We can keep talking about what this Tattvamasi actually means with so much more examples. But when Uddalaka has said, Sa yata shakuni shutrena prabaddo disham disham patitva anyatra ayatanam alabdva bandhanameva upashrayate evameva kalu somyatan mano disham disham patitva anyatra ayatanam alabdva pranameva upashrayate pranabandhanam hi somya mana iti. So when our Uddalaka told Shvetaketu this, Shvetaketu, as you know, he's a clever university student. He's just come back from the university. So Shvetaketu then immediately, he is still not satisfied with the example. He says, if this bird comes and sits or rests very next to the pillar, I don't understand how the bird is not able to recognize the pillar. If the supreme being, you're saying Sayayesha Anima, etc., and if the supreme being is everywhere and he is very subtle, but he is everywhere and he is inside me also, why can't I see him or know him? What you're saying is very fictitious. If he is really very close to me, if he is really very next to me, why am I not able to see him? This is a popular question that everybody asks, right? If the God is everywhere, why am I not able to see him? If he is so close to me, when I'm in Sushupti, why am I not able to see him or know him? This is the question that comes to Uddalaka when the first exam is completed. So again, what we should remember here is when you do this 9 steps of contemplation of philosophical truths, each example leads on to the next example. They are not to be taken in isolation. It is not one example and then the next example. No. The first example, Shvetaketu understands something. We are all Shvetaketus here. We should take that route to get into Shvetaketu's shoes here and then feel how he is asking this question. So when Uddalaka has replied that you are very close to him in Sushupti, Shvetaketu immediately asks, if I am very close to him, why am I not able to see him or know him? Bhuya eva ma bhagavan vijñāpayatvaiti. Tell me more, my dear father. Tell me more. So Uddalaka says, Tata somya iti hovacha. So be it, my son. I will explain it to you further. HinduKnowledgeAcademy.com will celebrate Vedic culture and present its philosophies to the modern Hindu in an accessible format. Our ancient heritage is our greatest strength. Through preservation and dissemination, together let us spread positivity in the world. Thank you for listening and welcome to Hindu Knowledge Academy.